Well, hey everybody. Sorry, my throat's a little sore. Spent some time yelling at some kids recently, but yeah, I want to jump straight into the discussion prompt for this week. I chose the subject of why and how did Baal worship become so prevalent in the Northern Kingdom, and really I want to explore some of the aspects of why I believe it was so rampant and widespread throughout Israel. So my position is that Baal worship thrived in the Northern Kingdom, one because of a combination of political expediency. There was also the cultural assimilation piece and the real root, which is theological compromise. Again, this is a failure of their covenantal identity as Israel's leaders tried to secure prosperity and protection through these goofy political alliances, marrying people they shouldn't have married, pagan practices, and instead of actually staying loyal and faithful to Yahweh. We begin to see this divide right out the gate. After Solomon's death, the kingdom gets divided. We find that in 1 Kings 12, and Jeroboam, he becomes the king of the north. And almost immediately, he ends up making a strategic decision to partner, and it's going to become spiritual disaster. So 1 Kings chapter 12, verse 28, the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold. And he said to the people, "You have gone up to Jerusalem long enough. Behold your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt, and set one in Bethel, and he put the other in Dan." And so Jeroboam's goal was to secure a national identity, national loyalty. And it's crazy they're running the Aaron play, right? That's immediately what God's people did after crossing the Red Sea. And so again, I think his motive was to prevent his people from returning to Jerusalem to worship Yahweh. So his compromise opened the door for syncretism. These golden calves, they weren't just idols, they were actually symbols of blended worship, Yahweh reimagined through Canaanite imagery. As Dillard and Longman note in Intro to the Old Testament, this was an attempt to legitimize political control through religious innovation. And this paved the way for Baalism to take root. So why Baal? Well, he's the storm god, and so the supposed controller of rain. Obviously, that bleeds into fertility and the whole agricultural success. And so for these people groups, famine was horrible. Not only was it personally devastating, but it would destroy the economy and also your military strength. And so in this agrarian society, survival literally depends on rain. And so worshiping a rain deity seems practical. As Bruce Waltke and Charles Yu observe in Old Testament theology, Baal was the false god of pragmatic religion, appealing because he appeared to deliver tangible results. So this is one of those, well, everyone's doing it and it's working for them, so why shouldn't we do it? When Israel looked around at the prosperous Canaanite, their neighbors, they saw that Baal worship was producing crops and wealth, at least on the surface. And so this is how idolatry works, where you see this visible security in the place of an invisible faith. Theologically, it's a rejection of Yahweh being the one true God. He's the true Lord of rain, as we see in Deuteronomy 11. So Israel's problem, it actually wasn't ignorance. It was their impatience. And then on the political side, Baal worship became institutionalized through royal endorsement. We would see King Ahab marry Jezebel, and she was a Phoenician princess of Sidon. This sealed the deal. Ahab took for his wife, this is 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 31, took for his wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, it's even in the guy's name, king of the Sidonians, and went and served Baal and worshiped him. He erected an altar for Baal in the house of Baal. which he built in Samaria. And so he didn't just tolerate Baal worship, he nationalized it. Mark S. Smith in the Early History of God explains that Baal worship spread because it aligned with royal ideology and international diplomacy. So in other words, Ahab's Baalism was a state-sponsored religion. He blended politics, economics, spirituality, all into a single system of control. And so Baal worship became normal, and it was woven into the very identity of the northern kingdom. But God obviously didn't stay silent. That's where we see Elijah, the prophet, rises up to confront this false worship head on with the Mount Carmel moment, where Elijah prayed in 1 Kings chapter 18, "Answer me, O Lord, answer me, that this people may know, O Lord, you are God, and that you have turned their hearts back." That moment exposed Baal's impotence. So despite all the noise, the frenzy, not to be too cheeky, but like Baal couldn't make it rain because only Yahweh commands the heavens. So after the fire fell from heaven, obviously the people repented, but that was temporary. And I think the issue wasn't just theological. It's the language is cultural entrenchment. They're so rooted in their Baal worship. It's become so part of Israel's political, their economic, their social rhythms, their national identity, that even though they repented, it wasn't permanent. Some scholars argue that Baal worship wasn't foreign, but rather a reinterpretation of Yahweh worship using Canaanite terms. They suggest that early Israel simply localized Yahweh in their own version of Baal, a natural cultural movement. The issue with this view is it underestimates the covenantal distinctiveness of Israel's faith, as we see in the Shema, going back to Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind." And so Yahweh's uniqueness isn't negotiable. Any attempt to merge him with another deity wasn't contextualization, it was corruption. And so the prophets didn't see this as an evolution. They saw it as apostasy. So just to summarize, big three things that I think are the reasons Baal worship became normal in the northern kingdom. You got political compromise, so that's Jeroboam's power grab. You got the cultural assimilation piece, adopting these Canaanite views, and then you have the theological distortion, which is redefining Yahweh in Baal's image. So love that Elijah, his question still echoes for us today, is how long will you go limping between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. Thank y'all for the time.